having a culture of experimentation such that when you stumble upon one, that you recognize what you've stumbled upon. It feels like the people who seek disruptive technologies fail more than those who just experiment and listen.
Hello, and welcome to another episode of the Flywheel Effect. I'm your host, Brent Sonnek-Schmelz. And as always, we're sponsored by Vital. Vital's where you should go as an integrator, as a luxury home service provider for your business excellence. You may be a salesperson, you may be a technician, but we're going to make you a great business person by bringing metrics, benchmarking, and a world of information and knowledge around what makes businesses successful. So if you're interested in learning more, contact us at growwithvital.com. So Matt, how are you doing today?
Man, I'm doing fantastic. I'm a little hungry because I'm about a week into going back to intermittent fasting, which means I don't eat until 11 o'clock. So my feeding window is like 11 to 7, and it, varies a little bit here and there. I traveled quite a bit this week, so had to adjust that. But I'm actually looking forward to being done with this so that I can have breakfast at 11 o'clock. But that's a side note.
That's a side note. So I kind of did intermittent fasting for a while, and I didn't love it. So sometimes it was like that day-to-day thing was just annoying. Almost, I'd rather do like one fast a week if I'm going to do it, like a full 36-hour fast. Dinner, nothing until the breakfast the second day after. I almost feel like I'm able to do that better, and I feel like I get a better impact. Have you tried that?
I haven't, but I wholly believe that there is no one prescription for fasting. In fact, some people just can't do it or don't align with it. And I go in and out of it for a number of different reasons. I find for me that the morning time is typically my most productive time anyway. And when I'm on the intermittent fasting program, I'm very clear in the morning time. And then it also allows my energy to extend further into the afternoon. It shifts things nicely for me. Plus, I love food. And so what it does is with a reduced feeding window, I can eat a lot more of the stuff that I love to eat and not have to worry so much about overeating. So I think for me, there's a mental clarity piece. I've shifted now to cardio in the morning instead of weightlifting. So I'll do my lifting in the afternoons. And I'm nicely full at that point too. I'm not feeling hungry while I'm lifting. So it's finding that balance for me. And again, I switch it up, but I should try, a 24 or 36-hour fast. I think that'd be really interesting.
36-hour fast isn't that bad. Like, if it's something that is incredibly doable, I mean, I think you're not a big coffee drinker. It helps if you're kind of a caffeine drinker. You drink black coffee, black tea, and then water and some salt or whatever. If you want, doesn't even matter when you're doing that short period of time. But it's kind of interesting how your body feels that next day. And there's this whole theory that your body, right around the 36-hour point, that your body starts kind of doing this kind of like cellular regeneration thing. You're kind of entering the ketosis stage, which you don't quite enter when you're just doing the fasting window. It's the same way. So it's something to give a shot. I know a couple people have done like 72 hours, which is a little too intense for me at this point, but I've considered it.
Yeah.
I know one thing I know we're not going to do is we are not going to do it in Spain.
No, for sure. No, we will be eating well in Spain. That's the other reason. I know I'm going into 2.5 month period or so between the holidays and travel and everything in January and February. And I put on a few extra pounds in the last couple of months. So just trimming down and feeling good about it. So that's the shift. But yeah, it's funny. Anytime I have something right around the 10 a.m. mark, like, all right, I can get through this, and then I get to eat afterwards. My breakfast is. The breakfast I make is one of my most favorite things. I may have shared this with you before, but it's one of my most favorite things in life, which is the weirdest deal for me because it's Greek yogurt, which for years I stayed away from because it smells like sour cream and I hate sour cream. And so for years I'm like, no, I can't do the sour smell of Greek yogurt. But then, I don't know, 2 or 3 years ago, I jumped on the bandwagon. So I do Greek yogurt and I make my own granola, which is really easy. So I have Greek yogurt, homemade granola, and either blueberries or cherries. And then I have a probiotic and of course my creatine in there. And so it's like this incredible meal for me that I don't know. It's just like this reset when I get to eat that Greek yogurt meal, man. It's fantastic. So I look forward to that every morning. And
That's great.
now I
I
get it like
have
4 hours later.
I have a yogurt thing too. So my dad was a hippie in the 60s and 70s, and he got into kind of hippie thing. He would make his own yogurt, and he had this thing that he called creamy. And I think he got a recipe from some like, I don't know, some health food magazine or something. But it's yogurt. He'd make his own. He didn't strain it, so it wasn't Greek. Greek yogurt's just strained yogurt without a lot of whey. Yogurt plus two things, three ingredients beyond that: wheat germ, brewer's yeast, and maple syrup. And nobody eats brewer's yeast anymore, but it's like this. I'm actually shocked that brewer's yeast hasn't come back in vogue with kind of how power packed it is of nutrients and everything. But it's yogurt, Greek yogurt. Yep, not Greek yogurt. You can use Greek yogurt if you want. It makes it a little thick. And I love it. It's a little bitter because brewer's yeast is a little bitter. Solgar brewer's yeast is my brewer's yeast of choice. And I had it. My dad used to give it to me when I was little, and I don't think anyone else would eat it, but he ate it and I ate it. It's still the thing I like. So when I'm kind of on a health kick, I have that. And it's the brewer's yeast makes it totally different than anyone ever heard of. Maybe I'll send you a tub of brewer's yeast, Matt, for
Yeah.
Christmas.
Yeah, that'd be awesome. So is brewer's yeast different than nutritional yeast? Because nutritional yeast become very popular in the last probably 10 years.
So nutritional yeast became popular because it's an umami bomb for vegans who don't want to have dairy, right? So it's like a cheese substitute.
Right.
Brewer's yeast is the yeast that's left over after brewing beer. It's literally from that process. It's a very, very different thing. It's not an umami thing at all. It's sold by supplement companies. Like Solgar is a vitamin company. That's where you get brewer's yeast from. And if you look at the profile, the kind of vitamin and mineral profile of it, which is purely natural, it's nothing added but the brewer's yeast, is pretty wild.
Interesting. So it has a lot of vitamins and minerals in it.
Tons.
That's why okay.
And but it also has protein. It has some fiber. It's this really interesting mix of, but in a pure way. It's not manufactured.
Yeah.
It's just it's a residual product of brewing beer.
Huh. Yeah. Yeah. Send me some of that.
So
Amazing.
It's cool. All right. So, and the other piece is I'm wearing my little beanie today. It's a little chilly. Fall finally has come to New Jersey, and my office doesn't have a lot of heat, so it is hat time. I'm actually excited about fall. Like we had summer through the end of October in New Jersey, and now it finally dropped into the 30s to 40s, and I love it. Yeah.
So is that fall or is that winter?
No, that's fall. That's fall. When the highs are in the 40s to low 50s, it's fall. When the highs are in the 30s into the 40s, it's winter. It's like a 10-degree difference.
Yeah. We're getting barraged. I look at my weather app here in California. It just started raining overnight. We're of the 7 days on the weather app, 6 of them have rain, which I know we need. And, California being a desert climate needs the rain. But I like it sporadically. I don't love it in, a 6-day in a row period. And I realize it's because I'm such an outdoors guy. I want to go walk. I want to go ride my bike. I want to go outside. And this morning, when I had to go to the gym to ride the bike, it's it just doesn't do it for me. So I want to work through this rain, as quickly as possible. And then of course that means snow in the mountains, which will be exciting.
Yep. It should be interesting to hear. All right. We have an interesting episode today, which we haven't even started yet, 10 minutes in, which is great. It is book 3 of our 4 books we're going to read this year. We've read all 4, whether this is 2025, this might be in 2026. We'll see this episode, but it still doesn't matter. The book is, and this is the 3rd book here is, for example, is Matt's choice for a book older than 5 years that he would want to read together to get some impact. Matt chose a great book called The Innovator's Dilemma by Clay Christensen.
I thought this was your choice.
No, this was your choice, Matt. So I got The Long Way coming up.
The Long Way was but wait a minute. So and it's funny, I don't even remember at this point the other 2 that we read. The Coach the Person, Not the Problem was a modern one. And then,
right, and then How to Make a Few $1 billion was my modern one.
Was your modern one.
This is your old one.
This is my
And then the reason, so this is how I remember how you got to this book. I remember because I was surprised when you said it. You said, what I did, I think you actually used ChatGPT to give you a list of books older than 5 years old that are classics of business literature.
That's
And this is
right.
the one that stood out to you about that list, right?
That's right. You're right. And here I was, our team has been also reading this book and they're like, man, this is very much a Brent book. I'm like, yeah, totally. Brent totally chose this as the book that
No,
we read, but clearly it's mine. So look at that. Isn't it
it's
funny
yours.
how the universe works?
Yeah, but that's why I was so excited about it. The reason I'm excited about it, I read this book in 2001, published in 97. We're in 2001 in business school. We going to business school in the early 2000s. This was one of the seminal, recently published book that was in constant conversation of those people that were involved in anything entrepreneurship. It is as classic of a business book as you can get. And before we get into the book, this is one other piece on this, is I thought I remembered this book well, its lessons. Mm-hmm. And so I want to say thank you for recommending this book because I would not have read it otherwise. And by the way, this is my copy from 2001.
It looks in mine.
Yep. The graphics are totally late 90s,
Oh, yes.
right? And you're going to say thank you because I got into this book and when I read it, I was 25 years old, right? And I thought I understood it. And I did. I understood it. But now, 25 years later, the nuance of what I understood upon reading it is dramatically different. And the reread, having a context of the initial read, made it really good. And I'm bringing this up because rereading books is an undervalued thing. People think, oh, I already read that. I need to read something else because get more out of it. Not necessarily.
Yeah. That's a really, really good point, Brent. And you have the layers of your real business experience on top of that, right? Like you can reflect against I saw that happening in this organization that I was a part of versus when you're in business school, you don't have that same context, right?
Right. So it was this was for a lot of the things that I'm working on right now, this was a tremendous read. So thank you and thank ChatGPT.
Yeah, no, that's fantastic, man. And real quick, while we're on the topic of reading, and then we'll dig into this, you sent me a care package, which I appreciate, of nonfiction books. I started
Fiction books, novels.
novels. Thank you. I started the Hobbit, thinking that series is a favorite of my daughters, and so I'm like, I've never been. That's not sci-fi. That's fantasy, right? So I've never really been a fantasy or sci-fi fan. But I said, hey, you know what? Let me stretch a little bit and try this. And I think I got maybe a chapter in, maybe not even a chapter. And I'm like, you know what? This isn't for me. And so I put that one away. And so then I went through the box again and I picked up a couple. I do find that action adventure stuff is more my speed. And there were a few in there, but then I happened to grab Reacher. And I'm like, you know what? I started watching the recent series Reacher. I think it's Netflix or Hulu. So I'm like, you know what? I wonder if it will be similar and enjoyable. I mean, I think I'm 5 chapters in, and as it turns out, the book that I'm reading, The Killing Floor, is the basis for the current series. So I'm reading my way through what I've already watched, which is fantastic.
Is it good? You enjoying it?
Yeah, I'm enjoying that. I really appreciate that. And also the fact that you gave me this, let's call it a smorgasbord of different types of books, allowed me to figure out, land into what I like. And also it reminded me of, in my childhood, the action and adventure books were always the ones that I would read. And then, of course, anything that was required reading that wasn't those things, I just, set them aside. So it grounded me back in, my childhood as to saying, or knowing, I should say, that action and adventure is definitely my nonfiction of choice.
I love those too. A little bit of mystery, some thriller, I think that. So with that note, though, let me tell you, there's a book in there that you're not going to think is action and adventure. It's called Watership Down, and it is action and adventure.
Okay, Watership Down,
but rabbits.
Okay,
I just reread it. It's another one of my rereads. I reread it 3 months ago. I read it. The last time I read it, is in 6th grade, and I read that on my own. It's a long book, but it's great. Wait till you get into rabbits. It'll be awesome.
I think I remember looking at that one, and there was another, I don't remember the name of it, you probably do, where it was like the ex-convicts or the guys that are recently released from jail, some story about them that I was considering reading that one as well.
Recently released from jail, ex-cons. It was the firm. I put the firm in there. I put a Dirk Pitt novel, the Clive Cussler, I think.
I'll go grab it. It's called Road Dogs.
Oh, that's good. That's Elmore Leonard.
Yeah, Road Dogs.
That's a good book. Elmore Leonard is really fun. So you know Elmore Leonard, even though you don't necessarily know Elmore Leonard. He wrote the book that Get Shorty's based on and Be Cool.
Oh, okay.
You know, the movies. You know, he basically, I think like 40 of his novels have been turned into movies.
Oh, nice. Yeah. Well, that one will be next after Reacher. That was it. It was a toss-up between those two, and I ended
That'll
up
be good too.
Reacher. But
and that's all happens in California. That's on the beach in L.A.
oh, nice, cool.
So that's why I put that Elmore Leonard book in, because of the California connection.
Thank you.
Got like 6 of them. Cool. All right. So novels are good for those people who don't out there. Just my little PSA. 2 PSAs today. Rereading books is good. You'll get a lot more value out of the ones you remember. 2, reading fiction and novels is awesome. It's great for your brain. It takes you a different place. It drives creativity. Reading is not just an activity to, self-improve. It's like, just let it be, and you'll find some benefit. So anyway, 2 PSAs, no more than that. All right, Innovator's Dilemma, Matt. Let's get your take first to start with. Or do you want me to give the quick 5-minute the TLDR on this one?
Yes. Yeah.
For those not on the internet too often, TLDR means too long didn't read. So, which is long posts. And actually, the introduction to this book is actually a really good too long didn't read for the entire book.
Yes.
It lays it out really well in about 10 pages. Mm-hmm. Right? So, bottom line of Innovator's Dilemma is that when you have disruption in an industry, the disruption can come from some technological place. It uses a couple different models, but the basic premise is companies that are disrupted are not necessarily this is the Innovator's Dilemma, are not necessarily making bad business decisions or bad business people. In fact, they could be fantastic business people who are making rational decisions around the profit motive of their own company. And the disruption has not yet risen to the level of impacting their current business. But as that disruptive technology improves over time, by the time it's large enough for that company to consider, they no longer can catch up to the disruptor. And so therefore, a well-managed company can be disrupted as much as a poorly managed company can. And that's the dilemma. How do you deal with that disruption if the proper decision for your business is to not deal with that disruption? Is that about how you remember, Matt?
Yes. There's so many nuggets to this book.
Oh, yeah.
It's funny. This is not my style of book, as it turns out. I am very much, I live a life of TLDR, right? And I like things to be explained very concisely. I can understand complex concepts very quickly. I don't need them explained in a really long, lengthy manner. And this book stretches everything out, which I love all of the examples. I just felt like overall, there's just a lot here. It's a very academic book, right? And so that's my only beef with it. It is definitely one of those books where, a chat GPT summary probably is worthwhile for many folks, but there are nuances that you'll learn in reading the book that you wouldn't pick up. I wouldn't think in that. But I loved it. I think it highlights truths that anybody who's been around in business probably understands, but is not able to articulate in the way that the book articulates. So yeah, I mean, I can go through a lot, made a few notes of the things that that I picked up here that were really solid for me. But I think it'd be just fun to kind of talk, have a little bit of banter back and forth about what's your take on the way the book was written, right? I just sort of described the way it was written. What are your thoughts on that? And then we can kind of dig into some of the other bits and pieces.
This is about a reread for me. So if I go back to our conversations that I had with my friends in business school about this book, because I was assigned or we all just read it, one or the other, I can't remember. Pretty much everybody says, you can get the gist of the book from the intro.
Right.
About 10, 15 pages. and which was sort of dismissive of the rest of the book. But on the reread, that's my frame that I went into rereading. Okay, I'm going to start here and we'll probably figure it out. But then I got into the chapters and I'm like, okay, this case study does a really great job of laying out these other aspects of this model in a way that, if you understand the nuance, can have tremendous impact on decision making in your business. For example, like one good case study that I completely forgot about that I found incredibly valuable is around excavating equipment.
Yeah.
Okay? I really like this. So
That was
you
one
think
of my
this is all technology, right? This is all technology. This is about a 50-year disruption of excavator equipment. Big time excavator equipment. The customers were mining companies, big development companies, and the excavators were run off cables and pulleys and can move yards and yards of material at once. And the value driver of those excavators was how much material they can move in a single scoop. That's what mattered. They had a problem though. Those cables sometimes broke. And when they broke, it was a problem. It was dangerous. They're flying around. It took forever to fix. So over this time, there came around this other option, hydraulic excavators, backhoes, essentially. Small. They can move a quarter of a yard of material at once. They didn't have a lot of power. They were not meant for the excavating customer. But you know what they're really good for? They were really good for moving a little bit of dirt and digging a hole and doing it quickly and easily and cheaply. And hydraulics don't break. So what this looks like is you have, and this is kind of I'm using this as a framework. You have these large companies that built these big excavating equipment. They had customers. Those customers wanted to measure the excavating equipment based on number of yards of material that can be moved in any given period of time or per scoop. And that's how they judged value. Or also how long of a reach, meaning you didn't have to move that excavator to get further out. And then you had this other product that came on that was built by other companies. And this kind of gets us, the disruption almost never comes from the incumbents. That's why they get disrupted. They could just do something small. So they were completely dismissed. But this is where the beauty of this model is. Over time, that small little backhoe got better. The technology got better. They could dig bigger holes. They can move more equipment. They can move more material. They're still easy to move. And over the course of 30 years, they got to be able to move 2 yards of material, but with a lot better. So I'm going too long on this. This is going.
No, you're not. Well, I want to add something. I mean, and all of it is great. Of course, it's funny. Both of us found, and maybe it's just like our
boys.
Love. Yeah, we're boys. We both found the excavator one to be a lot of fun and interesting. The part there that I'll add to it is that excavator, the hydraulic excavator, the small one that didn't do that great of a job in comparison to the cable excavator, it found all new use cases, right?
Yeah.
In the small landscaper or the difficult to reach location where you couldn't get the cable excavator in there. So it's sort of one of those things where if we were to picture the curve, right, the hydraulic excavator, of course, started out really slow and new markets emerged, but it still was compared heavily to the metrics that you just described from the cable excavator. But man, once the technology on the hydraulic excavator started to improve, that's when it hockey sticked, right?
Yeah, and this is the key. So a disruptive technology pretty much never disrupts the incumbent technology in the market that it dominates.
Right.
Like that hydraulic excavator was never going to dominate the large excavating market. So therefore, it's not going to attack those customers, the large excavating customers. The key to disruptive technology is finding unknown or new uses, new markets, new customers that are unknown. Like this is the key. This is like, wow. Like nobody knew that there was this market that for backyard ditch digging, because you know what? Ditch diggers were cheap. Like people didn't get paid a lot back in the 50s to dig ditches. So but even when you think, hey, let's mechanize this. But all of a sudden you could do it in 10 minutes instead of 2 days, right?
Yeah.
And so, but it was this totally new market. Even the manufacturers didn't know this market. So, but the incumbent companies, they would never look at that. They had no data. They had no customers. They'd ask their customers, do you want this? Why would I want that? I want to move 2 yards at a time. Okay, so I'm not going to bother. So, but you know what that shows? It's almost like, you know, whatever says build it and they will come is stupid. In some ways, this is build it and they will come, or build it and then go run around and find them.
Yeah. Yeah, and I think as we're talking about this, I think it would make sense to just ground some of the
Yes, good idea.
vocabulary. You know, sustaining innovation versus disruptive innovation. He goes
Good
over
idea.
this a lot in the book, and so the way that I understand sustaining innovation is it's in the example you just brought up. It's the cable excavator guys making their cable excavators better, right? So that's sustaining innovation. The disruptive innovation is where somebody comes along and says, well, you know, I'm going to make this hydraulic excavator and it's a completely disruptive technology or a disruptive, you know, innovation.
I'm going to give you a little more nuance on that. So a sustaining innovation typically uses similar, if can be radical, but technology that is used for the similar use in the same market.
Right.
Okay. That has excess capabilities. Okay. So this is the key. It has more capabilities. It can be a larger bucket. It could be a longer reach in this example. You know, they talk about disk drives. They could have more capacity, higher speed. Okay. The disk drives is like the biggest thing, and we should probably talk about disk drives a little bit. So sustaining information, incumbent companies are really good at sustaining innovation because their R&D and customer feedback loop helps sustaining innovations grow. And sustaining innovations can be very expensive. They can be massive investments. They can be risky, but they allow incumbent companies to continue to seize that market share and provide more value to their existing customers. A disruptive technology, on the other hand, operates on a completely different value chain. It does not deal with the customer needs in that market. It cannot be sold to those existing customers. It is something totally different that needs to find its way and build before it can overcome. But it doesn't disrupt until later. It finds a market and hones things. They're like, for example, in hydraulics, they're safer, less maintenance. As soon as it's safe and easier to move. So as soon as and this is what happens, a sustaining innovation will exceed the needs of the market. For example, the market doesn't care about moving 4 yards of dirt. It doesn't care about reaching 500 feet or whatever the road is. So adding additional length or size doesn't improve the value. So you're switching the value now to security, safety, reliability, and ease of transport. Cable can never compete. As soon as the hydraulic one got to sufficient reach, this happened over 20 years, sufficient reach and sufficient bucket size, those additional attributes, which are the disruption, made it overcome the market.
Exactly.
So right?
Yeah, good explanation. And I think what you described earlier kind of brings up the concept of that customer focus trap, right? Which is the customers who were buying the cable excavators, they were using the measures that they already knew about cable excavators, and they'd say, hey, I need a 3-yard bucket or a 5-yard bucket or whatever the case may be. And so these incumbents, these big organizations, are focusing their innovation, the sustaining innovation, on what the customers are asking for, and ignoring the emerging market of the hydraulic excavator, which their big customers simply weren't asking for.
Right.
Until they were.
Until they were. And once they were, they didn't have the expertise in that technology to be able to provide it. And they got disrupted and driven out of business. Yep. And the amazing is when you go through this, Matt, it's like you see these all industries, you say, how could these managers not see this?
Right.
And you're like, well, you think, isn't this bad management? Everyone thinks, how did Sears get disrupted get disrupted by Walmart? Because they talk about that too. They didn't use Walmart, they use more Kmart. How can you not see that coming? It's because your businesses isn't built to deal with that disruption.
Yeah.
Your management's incentive are different.
They're making decisions consistent with their values, right? As an organization. Yeah. And that's the piece. It's actually good management against the values that that they've chosen to adopt.
Yeah, and those decisions based on the profit motive of that company, the risk assessment of that company, the data and customer information that it's have leads to the decisions that they made, which also lead to their eventual downfall.
Yeah. Yep.
Wow. Like, you mean a good manager can't solve all problems? But they can, right?
Yeah, it's within that framework. Another thing that I found also interesting in reading through the book is how they explained, the different marketeers have different priorities, right? And so, and we can switch to another example, but we'll use this excavators example. The low end marketeer, or the entry level marketeer, when the hydraulic excavators came out, these are landscapers. These are people who are dealing with smaller needs. Their priorities are very different than those priorities of the high end or mainstream, cable excavator. And as I explain that, as I read it, it's like, well, yeah, of course, that's obvious. But I think it's very difficult for a big company to recognize that there's opportunity in these, low end markets or these other markets without realizing first that there's a priority difference between that market and the mainstream that they're serving.
Well, I think it's hard though. I think this is where it gets hard. Is there's always even in a large company, there's a resource constraint. Is where are you going to invest your dollars? And if your customers, and everyone says kind of this happens all the time. Think about your customers, even in our business, Matt. Like even if I don't think about your customers, and we're actually, honestly, we're going through a little bit of a disruption on our own. With your Ascend program, is in some ways disruptive of Vital's core business. But you have a resource allocation problem where what are the incentives for the management to invest in new and unknown that has no market data, has no research, has no customers that you could identify, and your customers literally say, I don't want that product.
Right.
Why would a rational manager ever do that? And this is where actually I found the most interesting book, is where my mind goes, is what is the way that you do that? And that's basically, it's a skunk works.
And Google does this incredibly well.
Yep.
Right? Google has, I don't know how many thousands of different experiments going on in their business at any given time, and I mean, under the Alphabet umbrella, they're incredibly good at it. And it's wild to think how far behind they were in AI for quite a while. And now they're stepping up, but it felt like they had missed the AI bandwagon for quite some time. Right. And now they're catching up, but
they missed it for this reason.
Yeah. Time and time again, Google has been so good at staying ahead of the curve and experimenting and skunk worksing the little projects throughout the organization that allow them to discover the disruptive technologies. And so it's surprising that they, were behind.
I think they're really interesting. So they let people run a little bit. Sundar Pichai is the CEO of Google. He was a year ahead of me at business school. Definitely exceeded my success rate by a couple of factors, a bazillion. But he got hired at Google as like a product manager. It wasn't like a super serious hire. And he did two things before he got to be CEO, and these are incredible. He's like, hey guys, I'd like to go build a browser. You mind? They said, all right, here's a little bit of money. Go figure out a browser. He built Chrome, which at the time was like Internet Explorer, even Netscape, when they started, was just dominant. It was like, why do you want to bother? He says, well, I think it'd be a good idea. Let me just give it a shot. So he just went off his own and he built Chrome. Okay, Chrome, now dominant. Okay, and then he was looking around and says, what else could I do? And he said, hey guys, I'd like to do something else. What do you want to do, Sundar? I said, I'd like to build an email program. Why? Because there's so many email programs. How is it going to be differentiated? It's really interesting to me. Can I build an email program? And he built Gmail. Right? And it's just because Google let him just go do his thing a little bit. They didn't let it evolve. And like those two pieces on top of search are just like so critical. And also for AI, just access to unlimited information. But literally, they just let Sundar go build those two things out of nowhere, which were not disruptive or crazy products. Turned out to be wonderfully engineered. But then he obviously then became CEO, and but then he did hold him back on AI. Yeah. AI was felt to be a little scary for search. Did their customers want it? The thing with this, customers didn't want AI. Why? Because it's really hard to do advertising in AI. So, hey, customer, do you want us to build this AI thing? No, I like search because I can pay the bills that way. And, you're going to make more money from me and I'm going to. Okay, we won't push it. So they waited like 4 years after until it was completely out of the bag. And then they had to spend billions to catch up. But they listened to their customers who did not want that.
Right. Yep.
It's pretty crazy.
Yeah.
There's a couple of lines in here that I want to kind of highlight. Because I think the concept here of that I'm pulling out of this book that I really like is you can't research your way to disruption. Like, people want to say, what does the data say? What do the customers say? What does the market say about this? And your answer is, I don't know. Let's go find out.
Yeah.
Most managers, really good managers that I know, are unwilling to accept that answer. And you're never going to invest if that's your answer.
No, I mean, you have to learn by doing and experimenting, and have processes for rapid iteration, have processes for recognizing that failure is a data point, right? I think that's what's important to be a successful disruptor. Like you said, you're right. I mean, you can't research what people don't even know they want.
I see this every day. It's like that lack of research scares people because you don't know. But you have to be willing to fail. Like towards the end of the book, he says, amid all the uncertainty surrounding disruptive technologies, managers can only count on one anchor. That anchor, experts' forecasts will always, not sometimes, always be wrong. And so you take that, knowing that all these forecasts on any disruptive technology are wrong, and then you have this. The dominant difference between successful ventures and failed ones generally is not the astuteness of the original strategy. You don't know what markets can take this on, meaning guessing the right strategy at the outset isn't nearly as important to success as conserving enough resources or having the relationships with trusted investors so that new business initiatives get a second or third stab at getting it right. You can't run out of resources before you try because the first option is going to always fail. The Honda bike example, which I think you probably took to as well, is the other one that I think shows that incredibly well.
Yeah.
Do you want to describe that?
Well, no, go ahead in that one. I think what I just heard from you in the piece that pops out for me is that it's really about staying in the game, which is true not just for innovative technologies. I think that's true for business in general. But if you're going to be a disruptor, you just have to stay in the game, because if you look at all of these examples of disruptors who stayed in the game, they didn't run out of resources, eventually succeeded.
Well, it's not just staying in the game, Matt. It's staying in the game and knowing when it's time to pivot.
Right. But what I'm saying is, like, obviously nobody's going to, as a disruptive technology, you're not going to just stay in the game and flutter along, right? Because
you might think my idea,
and you're going to use data and failure. You're going to use your experiments and failure to, shift.
Yes, but I think so. If you set your standards to meet a certain market need, and you stay in the game, and that market need turns out to be wrong, and you're not willing to shift off that market that you believe initially, and you don't do the pivot, you will still fail. And I think there was a couple of examples in that as well. You have to create a minimum. It's really about a minimum viable product, not over-engineered. It should be cheap, that you don't know the market, and let the market find it. Yeah. But pivot your efforts in markets very quickly without conviction that you're right. You cannot be you can have no conviction on the rightness of your idea.
Yeah.
And I think that's what Honda was. Like Honda, history of Honda is really awesome. It's like such an innovative little company that made fantastic small engines in Japan and brought them over here. You look at Honda, people think of Honda car, but they're on bikes, they're on snowblowers, they're on generators, they're on like their small engine work, and they are the best small engines in the world. Mm-hmm. Like Matt, you probably have some Honda of something.
Yeah. Right. Honda was always my favorite brand of motorcycle.
Right. They had small motorcycles and they wanted to get into motorcycles in the U.S. Motorcycles were dominated. So they came with this big motorcycle and it just failed. And somehow one of the guys that was here at Honda USA had these little motorcycles. Remember what's the name of them?
The 50cc Honda Trail 50, I think is what it was, right?
There was some goofy little name. What was it? It was totally a 50c dirt bike. Or actually, no, it was a little like delivery bike they used in the streets in Tokyo. Yep. And one day, these two guys were pissed off. They were losing. They're getting kicked out. They're going back to Japan in disgrace because their whole idea of entering the U.S. market failed. And they took their little bikes. It was like a goofy little name. I want to find the name. I love this little name, and from as I just drew a blank. So they took these little bikes and just started just driving them around. Kind of like went in the woods, or whatever, just had a good time for a day because they were going to go back to Japan with the tail between their legs. And somebody saw him and they said, hey, can I get one of those? Like, what do you want to do with this? You look like you're having fun. And so they said, sure. So they got a couple more. They got some other people. And people kept seeing these and asking for them. And all of a sudden, they just kept on shipping these bikes over and selling them cheap. They're like a couple $100 or whatever, right? Like they were cheap. Back, it was like 1960. And by the way, at this point, there did not exist anything called an off-road bike in the U.S. market. You had those old military bikes, but they were big, heavy Harley things.
Yeah. Yep.
Super Cub. Super Cub was the name. The Super Cub delivery bike. That's what the 50cc Super Cub. Cool name. And all of a sudden, give it to Honda, they realize, wow, people like these bikes. Let's start shipping them over. Hey, by the way, let's do some data forecasting. How many think we're going to send? I think the maximum market potential is 500,000 a year. Let's see if we can kind of approach that. Within 5 years, they were selling 5 million a year.
Unreal.
5 million in a market that did not exist. Nobody knew existed. Became the best-selling motorcycle in the country, like immediately, and just blew it up. So, but this is just two guys riding motorcycles in the woods that found this market.
Yeah.
Because they were going to be crazy.
Yeah. Experimenting and listening, right?
Yeah, you got to listen. You got to experiment. So anyway, Matt, I get excited about this book, Matt. I don't want to dominate this.
I thought that was a great example, and you explained it really well. And I think, one of the challenges, and almost every example that he breaks down in some way illustrates this. These big companies are driven by, they need big profits, they need big wins, right? If you have a $1 billion company, a $10 million business unit isn't that interesting. And so he highlights this in a couple of different ways, that's the challenge in these big organizations is they're moonshots, right? They're trying to make into a huge business unit, and they completely ignore the reason they miss the disruptive innovation is because they ignore the small business unit that could end up growing. And that's where you get back to the skunkworks thing and, thinking about how the economics inside of a big company don't really work in order to chase down disruptive technologies. You have to have, spin-off companies or divisions of organizations that experiment with these disruptive technologies. And I think that's why, you have all of these examples of big companies that failed because they didn't have business units or spin-offs or dedicate resources to experimentation.
I think it has to be more than a business unit. It has to be a wholly separate organization, right? That does not have a reporting obligation into the primary. I think that's one thing he makes clear. The companies that tried to merge the two and have them in the same invariably failed.
Especially the public company, right? Because you have
the public company.
Stockholder pressure and the board.
Yeah, you got stockholder pressure. Because, and the bottom line was that everybody is beholden to their customers. And their customer is the customer of their own value chain. The customers in this other one are a different value chain, and those customers don't care about that other market. So why would you commit resources to it? I think this is a great time, though. Like, I'm thinking about this book now is how do I utilize this thinking process for myself, the businesses that I'm operating in, and also how do I find those opportunities? But I think it's really interesting. This has been a little bit of a theoretical conversation, man. I think now, we have, don't want to run this out too far. How can people in the markets that we serve at Vital think about this book, and where are there any things that you're seeing that are applicable?
It's funny. I was thinking about the exact shift, as we're talking about these giant companies and spinning off and spinning. It's like, okay, our audience is, trying to put food on them and fund their 401k. So yeah.
A great minds think alike.
Yeah. So I love the shift, and I think that's a great way to wrap up here, in the next 10 minutes or so. But I think having the mindset to experiment, having an experimentation mindset is key. What is required is enough profit and resource to be able to fail. And my observation amongst, I would say 80% or more of the contractors we come across is their failure is not an option in anything they do. Like if one or two things that they're doing fails, they're out of business. And so what I might how I might describe that is we have to first create headroom for experimentation. And once we have headroom for experimentation, then we can start looking at disruptive technologies. You used the word seeking, or maybe that wasn't the exact word. I don't know that seeking disruptive technologies seems to work as well as just having a culture of experimentation such that when you stumble upon one, that you recognize what you've stumbled upon. It feels like the people who seek disruptive technologies fail more than those who just experiment and listen.
Yeah, and I think there's two things here. I think a different lesson. Being willing to experiment and have separate resources for that experimentation is really important. I think we have to define kind of what experimentation is for call it home service providers. But the other lesson I have from here is the organizational dynamics define what the business looks like, who their customers are, and how they think about success. And I think of integrators in that vein is it's a project-based business whose business is designed around projects and customer-based projects. It makes it really hard for them to focus on service and recurring revenue because their organizations don't like that kind of those kind of smaller profit dollars that have to go into that, and they don't have a good cost structure to deal with them. Right? Like, and instead of saying I can't spend a truck roll to do a service because it's going to cost me $500. The disruption actually is, how do I figure out how to get a truck roll? Maybe it's an outsource that allows me to get that, to do that service and make it the customer happy and profitable, even though it is different than what my core business is.
Right.
Right. I think that's a mindset I think is hard for a lot of people. I actually feel when I read this book, I was thinking about Daisy. Is what they're doing disruptive in a way that's going to change things? I don't know the answer. I know that they're giving it a shot, and it's upsetting a lot of people.
Yeah.
But is having that franchise model, is having a focus on the service levels disruptive enough to change the math of the industry?
Be interesting. Time will tell. I think that is one of those scenarios where time's going to give us a lot of those answers.
Yeah, it's always time.
And I think, again, it goes back to the headroom component. Those businesses who've built in headroom, and by headroom, I mean they're sitting on cash. They run a profitable business such that a failed experiment won't take them down. Those companies can also react to other organizations' disruptive experiments. So, for example, you brought up Daisy. If Daisy ends up being successful in doing certain things and bringing disruption to the marketplace, business that has headroom can adapt. A business that doesn't is going to be stuck in whatever rut they're in, right? They will have a hard time adapting. And we've seen that time and time again in the custom integration industry. I mean, how long have we been talking about service plans? How long have we been talking about lighting fixtures? And those organizations that have headroom have adapted quickly. Like, we see it. Our top 20%, top 20% of our members, the really successful ones that have built the headroom, like, they're the ones that are adapting more quickly. They have the most service plan penetration. They have been doing lighting fixtures successfully for a period of time. They have the ability to hire on a full-time lighting designer. And so it really just, for me, of course, you know how passionate I am about this, it just comes down to foundationally running a business that's making money and putting cash away and not spending everything that it brings in. And you open up room in the balance sheet to invest.
Yeah, and I think the difference between that kind of like really good business practice, Matt, and this concept of the innovator's dilemma is, when are those experiments potentially going to be, do those experiments have the potential to disrupt your core business and sometimes cannibalize it,
right,
but still making the decision to do it for the long run strength of your position? That is a step beyond pure experimentation. I think that's hard. In service, I'm not even sure of how much there is within service-based businesses for that. I think on the manufacturer side, manufacturers can definitely say, look, there's our things that they can disrupt that they're scared to do. Sonos, when it started, was very disruptive. That was active speakers all over the place with streaming capabilities. So it's very, very different, but all still on the same network.
Yeah.
Those are the types of things that do change markets. So like we're going to say, it's like, I'm trying to think. Like I could think of myself, like there's different ways you can look at this. I've gone through a couple of these cycles myself, and the key has always been having a separate team. Honestly, I think it's a separate team. I don't think that I think it's very hard for a core team to do both. Really good example I have historically for myself is family soccer business did not have was focused on team retail. I came in and decided, hey, can we sell this shit on Amazon? And by myself, past the animosity of employees who didn't understand it and didn't think it made any sense to commit any resources to this because it wasn't their customer, I built a $15 million Amazon business in a couple of years. But it started out really small. It's like, why are you doing this, Brent? Because I think it'd be cool. I like experimenting. But unless I was separate, it never would have happened.
Well, it's a lot like you mentioned earlier with Vital that, we're evolving the way we deliver our services. Yeah. And the first step in that evolution was to start a new program called Vital Ascend, which, will eventually be the framework by which we deliver a lot of our, services. And I'd like to say it was intentional, but I think the timing just worked out that we had, Brandon running that new program. One of our newer employees, but has the skill set to do it. And our existing staff it's been hard to get them to come along with the change. And I think a part of that is just human nature to resist change, but then also some people feel like things need to be proven first, right? And so we had a Brandon who launched the program, what ends up being, I think, about 6 months ago, and it's been successful. It was a successful experiment. We continue to experiment with things around it, but now that we recognize that this is delivering better results for our members while also being more effective for us to manage, it's better for everybody. And now we're in the process of shifting the rest of the business around this, which is going to take some time. But I think, you have organizations, much larger organizations that struggle to make that second wave shift, right? They recognize that this is an opportunity. They've recognized that this disruption is where we should go. But then that second wave of getting the rest of the organization turned towards that direction is where it seems like a lot of the big companies fail. And it's not easy.
Right. It's not easy. I also don't know if they have to move that whole organization. Sometimes it's just let the second organization grow. Like with Brandon. Brandon's great. And he had your support to just do what needs to be done. And I think that's the key. You need the support from leadership to do it. But you give the support to that second team to get that new disruptive product done. The original team is going to be focused on the original product. They're going to bristle at the other one. But as long as the leader has the support of supports both of them, you can have that glass wall that can allow them both to succeed in their own natural way. And I think that's something that small businesses can still do. You can have two independent teams as long as they have the North Stars the same, fully supporting both.
Yeah, if that's necessary. Like, in the case of ours, it's an evolution of the entire organization because that makes the most sense for our members.
But it's over time.
Yeah, it's almost like you think about PC manufacturers and sort of the way they shifted to say, okay, well, we're moving away from desktops and into laptops. That was originally an experiment. They were heavy desktop with a little bit of laptop. And then eventually it's like, can you even buy desktops anymore? I suppose you can, but you go to HP's website and it's laptops and, maybe a couple of desktops, right? So they decided to completely shift their computer business unit into laptops.
Yep. Yeah. So, but anyway, I think there are some key lessons here for, I think we laid this out of just be open to experimentation, I think is a key one. Segregate teams if you want to try something new. Like, I think for integrators, having your project-based team be in charge of service calls is a mistake.
Agreed. Totally agree.
If you want to do service, have a service team. Let them have their own kind of P&L and have them operate and have them figure it out.
Yeah.
The failure is doing the both at the same time with the same team.
Yep. Totally agree.
Right?
Not to mention the huge opportunity costs. And redirecting project resources to service.
Yeah, right. But that doesn't mean service is a bad opportunity, right? It's like, it's a great opportunity. You just need a different model.
Yep. Yep. Most people just aren't charging appropriately for it. I mean, it's a business model problem. It's not a, is this a great idea question, right? Question about
Right.
what's a great idea.
But it's still a lesson from this book, right? It's like,
Yeah.
like that segregation can make, put it this way, without the segregation, it's not going to be successful. With the segregation, it's possible for it to be successful.
Yeah. Yep.
So that, I think that's a key lesson. And also data and research, even though this is our vital way is data and research, data and research doesn't always provide the answer to what the future holds.
Yep.
You got to trust yourself. You got to trust your decisions, your intuition, and you got to experiment and be not afraid to risk a little to maybe win a lot. I love this book, Matt. You knew this when you were, it's funny, that story you had from the beginning says, oh man, I can't believe Brent picked this book. It's totally a Brent book. When you picked it, and I'm so glad you did.
Yeah, no, I am glad to. It was a fun one, and really enjoyed the conversation. So, it's funny, sometimes these, between you and I, seem to move a lot faster than when we have guests. So I think you brought up a while ago, we should do more of these. I agree. We'll have to come up with some topics, and I think we have another one coming up soon. So yeah, well done.
I love it.
And next book is The Long Way. I just pulled it out. Bernard Moitessier. What's that?
Yep, that's exactly it.
Yeah.
Now that book is not a business book, but but my goal is, when you're reading it, Matt, is to treat it a little bit of an allegory for entrepreneurship.
Yeah. Yep. I'm looking forward to it.
Sailing around the world by yourself nonstop. That's what that book is all about.
Yeah.
So anyway, we'll get that next time. But Matt, it's this great conversation as always. Thanks for a wonderful hour.
Yeah. Same.
And until the next time, this is the Flywheel Effect. Give us a like, give us a follow. And if you enjoyed this, also share it with someone who you think will find it valuable too. So, and until next time, thank you, everybody.
Oh, and by the way, we hear so many great things from our listeners. We would love for you to do a 5-star review. If you could just take a minute, literally just 5-star review it. That way, people who are looking at what we're doing, give us a chance.
You know what? That's a good point, Matt. I always say like or follow, but really what I want is a review. I should say, instead of a like, which is like a thumbs up, give us that 5-star. I know you guys like it. Just hit that button.
Yeah, we get a lot of really positive feedback. It just came back from a conference, and like a lot of people mentioned really great things. So just give us that 5-star. Appreciate that.
5-star.
That helps other people to discover what you've already discovered.
Perfect. All right. Until next time, guys. Thanks a lot.
Thank you for tuning in to the Flywheel Effect. Our journey through the intricate world of luxury home services continues to be fueled by your passion for excellence and innovation. If you found value in our conversations today, don't forget to follow us wherever you get your podcasts. More insights and resources. Visit us online at growwithvital.com. Until next time.